Hey guys, just real quick. So earlier today we were talking about buttons and passing this. So I figured out basically immediately what the problem was. Unfortunately, I had to tend to some other stuff, so I'm recording this a bit late. So basically, I remembered afterwards we need to use an arrow function because of the way React is. So E in this instance, or whatever you want to call it, this whatever you've written here is this. And so when we put here in this little section here, it could be in brackets, whatever you want to do, but basically this is what's called an arrow function. And so whatever you put here is the result of what's outside of it. In this case, it's this outer container, which is an object. And so it passes this object into the function when you do it like this. So here's our object, we use the arrow function, and then we can call a function and then pass this into it. So from here, I've got previous and next. So if I come up here, and this is actually, I got this fully working, so I can show it to you. That's what took probably the longest part. Bit of trial and error making it all look nice. So we've got toggle next and toggle previous. So here's our element. I named it the same just to keep it simplified. And so we have here, I'm just console logging it, and you'll see why in a little bit. And then I have var new ID. So I've got the object here, and then I'm passing it in, and you can see here e.target.id. So the target is the object, and we're targeting the ID, or we could target something else, like for example, the class name or whatever. There's a lot of things we can trigger, we can target from that. Or value, like if it was an input field, you could do target.value, whatever. There's multiple things you can output. I can do, for example, just e.target, and you would see the output of that. But we're just going to leave it as ID for now because that suits what we're doing here. And I'll do both. You know, I'm going to do both just for the first one. E.target and target ID. So you can see the different parameters. So from there, we've got, I'm just console logging it, so you'll see it on the web browser. Then we're creating a new ID. So we're taking the old ID, which I've made a number, and it's you can see there's a plus here, which basically means if it's a string, try to turn it into a number. So we've turned this, because it's an ID is always a string. I'm using a number, but we're always going to use a string. And if that, in this case, is less than 4, and we do a ternary expression where we increment it by 1 or return the original. So if it's less than 4, we increment it by 1 or just return what it is now, because it can't go any further. In fact, it would be a good idea to probably hide this button, like the next button in that case, but we'll worry about that in a minute. So then I come down here. This is for the buttons, because ordinarily you wouldn't want to share IDs between objects, but it doesn't hurt anything, honestly, and I do it all the time. But so I've got here get elements by class name. So B is document.get elements by class name shift number. So I've got both my buttons, my previous and my next, have a class of shift number. And I know there's only 2 of them, so I'm going B0 ID equals B1 ID, which equals this to string. So both of them share an ID, which is incremented each time. So while I'm using the ID is also shifting inside of the button. And the reason I'd also used it as the ID rather than the class name is because it would hide things when I didn't. And then I pass the current number into my hide elements thing, which does a for loop. And basically, if the number doesn't match, it adds hide. Otherwise, it makes it visible if it does match. So let me show you that in action. So let's go to, and I'll obviously push all my code here, so you can see that in action. So let's go over here, and I'm going to hit refresh just so everything's clear. Inspect element, and I'm going to show you the console. So here's my console, and you can see here's all of these, because actually one thing I didn't show. So let me go back over here. Actually, that's a good idea. So you can see here, these are the different parts. So when I did console log target, this is the target. The target is the object that I'm referencing. And so when I do target dot class or whatever, those are all outputted. They're console logged. So that, yeah. No, sorry, I'm sorry. That's my mistake. If I press next, then it will do it for that object. So here's my button. So it'll output the button on that instance. But if you look, let's go back to, I got my wires crossed. So basically what you're seeing is from here, because I also did that here, console log visible I. Visible I is selecting all elements by class name. So a similar thing where it's visible is a target. That's the target object. It's the same as you can see as that button. So e.target is the same as like get element by ID. With this part here is the target, and then you do something with that target. That makes sense. So I'm going to comment that out, and I'm going to comment that out because it's going to get confusing otherwise. And then I'm going to go back to this and hit refresh again. So we hit 2. You can see the number here is 1 is the old one because we console log straight away. 3, 4. No, you can't go any further. 4 is the end. 3, 2, 1, and it can't go any further. So it just shows that that does work. And obviously I would want to clean it up a little bit more. There's a bit of a height thing going on, so I'd probably make it an equal height. Also there's this over here, but just wanted to show you the proof of concept. This is just kind of to get you started with that, and passing parameters is just a nice little tutorial for that. Also, another thing I forgot to show you while you were in the call with me, I don't know if you realized this, but while we were all together, there was an error with this. So this is how it was. I'm going to put it back to how it was. And I just kind of scrolled past that. Didn't want to mess with it, but basically the fix for that was that. Boom, that's the fix. And so this is fixed and this is fixed, both of them. So if you see anything like that as in your travels, you might do, that's how you fix it. Super easy to fix. Anyway, thought that would be useful information, and I'm going to post this here in a second. So hope this helps. Thanks, guys.